Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. And I am your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, we talk about 4 different types of freedom: time, financial, location, health freedom. And in that light, I'm always interviewing guests, entrepreneurs, thought leaders on the cutting edge, changing the world. So today, we have a very special guest, Lois Hollis, and she's a shame and guilt educator, counselor. She's also a filmmaker and author, which is be interesting to talk to her about that. But today's talk is going to be all about emotional freedom and talking about shame and guilt. So I'm happy to welcome Lois. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Chris. And I spent my entire life in the medical field. I jumped from traditional to holistic to save my life. Excuse me, but it helped. And so I'm well versed in the medical field as far as how we interact with each other.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, I know shame and guilt is actually a pretty interesting topic with Brene Brown, kind of unleashed the idea mainstream. But tell us more about yourself and how you got started, and we'll get into the conversation.
Okay, well, I'm 79 as of last month, and I could talk for a few hours, so I'm not going to bore you with all of that, even though it's quite interesting. As I said, I was in the health field. Well, I'm still in the health. Once a nurse, always a nurse. I have 3 MDs in the family, and I've been involved in all sorts of areas of nursing. I started the first kidney hemodialysis unit in the United States in 1966 at Thomas Jefferson. So that should, it's a nice intro into the medical world. I'm sort of a trailblazer, as that would just say, and I was very instrumental with University of Maryland in Baltimore before that about the open heart team and University of Maryland. Not that I did anything as creative as the kidney unit, but I was instrumental in bringing the operating room and the recovery room together because those patients needed that transfer. So I look at myself as a trailblazer and loving health. And it's interesting that I always wanted to be healthy and always wanted to help people be healthy. That's my MO. But today I am in more or less the emotional health as opposed to the physical health. And it came from a very abusive childhood. I don't remember a lot of it, but I remembered it later on. I was dying around 55, heart, mitral valve prolapse and severe lung deficiency because I had scoliosis so badly. My lungs were crushing in. Yeah. I had broken jaws, brain trauma. I had very severe childhood abuse. Yeah. And the doctors were correct. I was dying because I took 30 years of medication for my migraine headaches. Mm-hmm. And everyone can attest to that.
Yeah.
Well, one day I fell on the floor crying because the doctor said, you just need to take more drugs. And I said, I'm dying already. And if I take more drugs, as a kidney dialysis nurse, I know I'm not going to make it. Luckily, I found a holistic chiropractor person that helped my body return back to normal and no more headaches. I can go out in the sun now. And so life is really happy for me because, however, as you all know, you got to do the emotional work. And that's where I found that my software was more or less being guilted and shamed. And I came to learn many things. I have an ability to find information that's not on the computer yet. I had a near-death experience in childhood. My neck was broken. I kind of went to other dimensions and came back. So I've always been in that dimensional shift place where I can find things that other people can't. It just is. So I was able to put it together that shame, guilt, I say shame, guilt, because it's really one word, is an energy that interacts with us. And once I figured that out, I could release the guilt and shame from my childhood. Shame, guilt is a very interesting energy. And people can call it anything they want. Some people call it the shame, guilt, leech. Some people call it the shame, guilt, monster. Some call it the evil wizard. I don't care what you call it. It's a negative energy. And I know Brene Brown says shame is making you feel bad about yourself, and guilt is you did something wrong. But that doesn't really heal you. Yeah. And when you separate the two, your brain, oh, I'm so glad I'm talking to medical people. The shame is in the unconscious mind and guilt's in the conscious mind. But as you know, it's the same thing. It's on the nervous system. It's just that one is called differently than the other because it's on two different systems. And I know that's how it works. But it confuses your mind because shame works 24 hours at nighttime to make more guilt. Guilt makes more shame during the day. And then you go to sleep and you get, so it's a vicious cycle of shame, guilt. And some people say shame is bad and guilt is good because we're moral. No, it isn't. There's no healthy poison, and you know that. If it's one item, how can one part be good and one part bad? I look at it as a coin, heads and tails, that shame, guilt. And the reason I'm doing this is because once you understand what shame, guilt energy is, you know how to kick it out of your life and how it doesn't belong to you. That's why I'm doing this, talk right now to help you to think another way. Now, shame, guilt energy has the lowest energy that a human species can live with. Did you ever hear of Dr. David Hawkins?
Yeah, I've heard of David, but go ahead and elaborate.
Yeah, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. I just, Dr. David Hawkins, he lives in heaven now. He did a map of consciousness, and I don't know if I sent that picture to you, but if you're interested, I can resend it. He did a mathematical address to each emotion. The highest emotion, as you know, is enlightenment. And that's 700,000 to the 30th power. And there is such a number, according to my brother-in-law. 5 zeros to the 30th power. That's enlightenment. And then we go down to love and joy and happiness and some confidence. And somewhere around 200, it turns to a negative. And when it turns to a negative, our frequency drops. We have more power when we're happy and sad. So we have anger and hatred and anxiety and depression. And guess what the last energy is? Shame, guilt. Shame. And it comes in at 10. 10. That's the lowest frequency that you can have and still be breathing. Isn't that interesting? So when people say, oh, guilt is good, I need to go slap them, but I don't, because that's the lowest frequency and it's a stuck. And I've noticed in your website and all, it's stuck. You get stuck in this, you're getting stuck in that. Well, shame, guilt is glue, and it actually makes you stuck in a hole because you have no way out. And as you know that suicide is usually brought about guilt and shame. I'm not good enough to live. I did this wrong. And so it's very important to mention that because the suicide is very on the rise at this moment in time. So I always tell people, if you're in shame, guilt, just get out. Call a friend, read a book, play some music, talk to your friend, go out. You have to get out of the shame, guilt energy because you're stuck. I've had a patient last week, or client as last week, and she was in severe regret because her mother had died from alcoholism. And she was very guilt-ridden because she couldn't help her mother out. And that's understandable. If people don't want to get well, you're not going to get them well. She went into regret instead of guilt. Regret gives solution. Shame, guilt doesn't give a solution because you're not good enough to even get a solution. So she went to regret, which is a higher vibration than guilt. And she started programs for people with alcoholism and helped them out of it. So that's one thing that I help people to see that, okay, regret's not the best. And depression is not the best, and anger isn't, but anything's better than guilt.
Interesting. Quite a fast. So tell us, shame and guilt. You talk about this. How do you basically heal from this? Like shame and guilt, is placed by society or parenting, and how do we recognize shame and guilt?
Okay, give me about 2 hours, but I'll give you the quick version, and people can always find on the website the details. Okay, now you're understanding that shame, guilt energy is not part of you. It's like a leech that comes onto you and sucks out your light energy. And that people in shame, guilt, they're not very active, are they? They're very down because their energy is being taken away from them. So that's the first thing to know, is that you may not see the energy of shame, guilt, but you know what happens to you. And that's why I became a filmmaker, to make shame, guilt visible so people can see what happens to them. Now, since you're all very medical, and I won't use a lot of medical terms because I will maybe flub up a little bit. So I'm going to be more technical. Shame, guilt energy is like a computer virus. What type happens to your computer when you get a virus in it? Right. It's terrible. Nothing works. Can you see the virus? No. You can see what it did, though. Your Microsoft Word, and hopefully you're praying to God, please don't lose all my pictures in my newest book. And oh my God, I'm in trouble. You did a very stupid thing. And why did you do that? That makes that energy is bringing shame, guilt upon you. I'm transferring it in words to you. That's how it comes to you. Wow. I love what you're doing. It's awesome. Those words are not shaming. So that's how we get shame, guilt from other people. We got it from our mother and our father and our grandmother and the teachers and the church and the religion. I don't care what religion you have or what religion you don't have. They're going to shame you. The government, the medical field, and my experience in the medical field, and my daughters, who went through med school, it was a very shaming experience. That's their way, and that's what they do. But you have to understand that when someone teaches in shame, guilt, then it comes onto you. But if you don't accept it, that's okay. But you don't know this. And that's why I'm a teacher. I'm teaching people that the shame, guilt that people throw upon you for whatever reason, you can just not accept it. But you have to know it not to get it. As Sansoon said, know thy enemy. So I'm all about knowledge here. The more you know, the less shame, guilt you're going to get from other people and from yourself.
Interesting. So, why do you think shame is so prevalent in, for example, like profession of medicine, or especially one where I noticed it was most in, like narcissists or manipulators, bullies. They use shame and guilt.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I really don't know, but it is true. However, what I can say from a nursing standpoint, I am very sensitive, and my will is to help others. And we're more of a giving profession, even if you're in it for some other, you want to help people heal. And you're giving. To go into the healing health, you want to help. You want to heal. And when that gets slammed down, either you did it wrong, you did the wrong medicine, or you didn't hear the patient right, you shame yourself, and also you get it from the patients and your superiors. Why didn't you do that? You should have got the dose different, or what there's always that, because medicine is not perfect. I've seen some incredible miracles and, some other things that didn't work. And even though the person will have the best operation, maybe the aftercare is not perfect. And I was on a floor ICU with like 4 or 5 patients that needed individual care. Could I do that? No, I called the director of the nursing and I said, I will not be responsible for 4 critical patients on a respirator. Either you send me people to help or I leave. but you have to know that I will not do this. Now, when I was 20, I wasn't that good. Today, 79, I'm going to say, I won't do that. It takes a little maturity to do that. So that's how we get shamed and guilt ourselves. We're overloaded. I mean, I don't even want to get into the situation with the COVID right now and how demanding it is that we, no matter what situation we're in, we have to know that we won't accept shame, guilt from other people or from ourselves. That's a mind thing, but also you have to live it by actually seeing the words as shame, guilt, energy coming upon you and say no. Now, it took me a couple years to remember, in that IC theater, I was doing this and that. Oh, that's the shame I took. I throw it away. So you can actually see it, feel it, and remove it. And that's how people to get rid of it. You cannot say, I get rid of all the shame, guilt in me, because it doesn't work that way. You actually have to find it and release it and learn how not to take any more in. But the more you do it, the better you get. And the more skillful you get, and you go, oh my goodness, that is so cool. I really saw that. And I just didn't take it. Wow, good for me. I'm good. That's why I called my films I'm Good. Because every time I did something good, I had to compliment myself because I was so put down in my childhood. Because I was dyslexic. I was born in 43. In 1950, they did not know dyslexia. And I also had Erin syndrome because of all the brain traumas, that all the words would move. So I was considered an idiot child. Yeah, my parents came into the Catholic school and they said, your child is an idiot child. She writes only backwards and she's unable to read. So a little shaming there. We get it from, I got a Jewish book and it's called How to Guilt Your Child into Obedience. Okay. It actually says that. We are trained. You can't blame your mother, your father, your grandmother, your social structure. It's everywhere. But you have to be smart. And not everybody knows what I'm saying. So you're kind of like a forerunner. And that's why I have a group called the Shame Guilt Stoppers. We all try to learn together. Thinking, do you remember the Wizard of Oz and Dorothy going up the Yellow Brick Road? Okay. She's walking to the river, Wizard of Oz, and she has such fear. Well, the all and powerful Oz, the all and powerful director of the hospital. I mean, we are faced with that all the time. So what does Toto do, the little doggy? He pulls the curtain back. And what does he see? A little old man, bald and gray, with a big machine with green smoke. And that's what shame guilt is. It's a big puff of smoke. And if we have that concept, we can all be a Toto, because that's what I do. I help pull back the curtain that shame guilt is just negative energy. And it comes into our body through energy. And as you know, we have lines, meridians, and we're electrical beings. So what happens if you put this negative energy into an energy being? It distorts. Our positive emotions turn negative. See, each emotion has a positive orientation and a negative. So the compassion turns to depression, intuition turns to anxiety, and passion turns to anger. I said, gee whiz, I don't have to go to therapy for anxiety and depression and suicide and bullying and all these other things. I just have to get rid of shame, guilt, energy. How cool is that?
Yeah.
That's what I offer people, the shortcut, because I have people that come to me that have been in depression counseling for 3 or 4 years. But if you don't get rid of the shame, guilt causing it, you're always going to be depressed. One client said, I don't want to manage my depression. I don't want to be with it. I want to get rid of it. And I said, you will never get rid of your depression until you get rid of the shame, guilt, energy that's making it.
Yeah.
Totally different philosophy here.
How can, very interesting conversation. How can people follow you, contact you, reach out to you?
Well, loishollis.com, LOI. On my website, I have many podcasts, and wonderful hosts like you, Chris, always have a different angle on shame guilt. So it's not boring. You can listen to my podcast. I have films. I'm Good Film. It talks about how the shame guilt energy comes into us and how do we can get rid of it. Also, we need to make friends with our inner critic.
Mm-hmm.
We can't cut them up. We can't kick them out. We make partner friends with them. Inner critic now calls himself king. And instead of bothering me with negative voices, he's out there finding podcast hosts like you. He took another job and he empowers me and I empower him. And also I have a newsletter, 500 questions, one answer. I show you 500 ways you shame yourself and other people shame you. We got to learn. We were taught by our mothers and fathers in school and religion how the guilt is an emotion. You should be so grateful you have guilt because you can, repent for all your sins. No, you don't. You can be smart, but don't guilt yourself because that brings you down to 10, right? You're not, and you're a very learned person. A 10 energy mark is not very intellectual.
Thanks so much for coming onto the podcast. For all of the listeners out there, Lois's resources will be in the links and show notes. And let's thank Lois for a fantastic podcast interview.
Okay, thank you.